Okay.
That was very rhythmic. Have like, feel like maybe more. Yeah, but like.
Oh
Why are there so many? Does anyone know? Everyone gets one.
Okay, guys, thanks. So I'm going to take you through this workshop, and we're going to use Pachelbel's canon. But the cool thing is that you're going to be able to improvise your own versions of the song. Kind of imagine like if Pachelbel was sitting at the piano bench, what was the process going on in his head when he was writing this song? I'm going to show you what I think that process was. It all starts with having the information. Knowledge is power. And so what I've done is I've given you this visual aid that gives you the harmonic information. And it's as simple as each one of these stacks having the notes in each chord. So if you look at underneath the letter D, then underneath the letter D, you've got the notes that are in a D chord. There's only 3 notes, D, F sharp, and A, but what I did was I stacked them everywhere they occur in first position. So just to get us warmed up into this, reading these stacks, let's just go through a really quick process with that. Now, obviously, if you play bass or cello, you're gonna read in the bass clef version, viola, you're gonna read in the alto, and violin's gonna read in the treble. So look underneath the letter D, see the notes that are available, and choose one, noting the key signature, and then let's just hear what that sounds like. Ready? One note from the chord D, and let's hear it. Perfect. Now do the same thing. Pick a different note in that same stack. Pick a different note. Let's hear that and play. Yeah. Now go to the next chord, the A chord. Pick a note from that stack. Notice the key signature, please. Your C sharps apply, and let's hear that. Yep, great. Now look ahead to the next note, which is B. Underneath the letter B, pick a note there. Let's hear that. Exactly. And that's the process we're going to use. You're just going to be choosing any one of the notes that's in the triad, that's in the chord. But we're going to do it in time. So for example, I can pick one note from D, one note from A, one note from B, one note from F sharp, one note from G, one note from D. Just looking ahead, one note from G. Let's do that together. Ready? Here we go. And the top, on the first chord, D. Look ahead to A. Look ahead to B. And F sharp. G. And do it again. Just look ahead. One more time, let's do it again. One note from D. Look ahead. And one more time, one more time. Great. Thank you. That's it. That's one of the most powerful things I think that you can learn about harmony is that if you want to play a note that fits in the melody, all you need to know is what are the notes in the chord. And you can pick any one of them and then you can just order them next to each other. It's like connect the dots. It's like dragging and dropping. It's a very mathematical process actually, isn't it? A lot of times when I thought about musical creativity and composition, I just thought it was like this magic, And I talked about earlier the intuitive side of creativity and, the endless possibilities with making music. But when we're talking about tonal music, when we're talking about making a melody that fits with a chord progression, that's a very specific context. And you can think about it this way. You could do this without your instrument. You just drag and drop. So let me give you some more examples of how we can apply this, just to get used to like working with the chord stacks also. So what you could do, if it's comfortable for you, just You can stay with one note per chord, but on some of the chords, if you want to try to grab two notes, you can do that from the same stack, obviously. So two notes from the D stack, two notes from A, two notes from B, two notes from F sharp. Maybe I just go to one, and then one note on D. So let's try that. You can pick one or two notes. Ready? Here we go. And do it a few times. Again. And try to do something different. You know, just work at your own pace. One more time. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Very nice job. I go to a lot of programs all over the world, and I really get to see sort of the difference. You know, you guys are a great group. Really awesome. Very impressed. So, what do you think about that? Any thoughts? Raise your hand if you think you're surprised at how easy this is. Great. Raise your hand if it makes no sense to you whatsoever. Okay, good. That's good feedback. Got any other comments about it? Like, how does this strike you? Anything that just strikes you? Yeah. I'm sorry, can you speak up? Oh yeah, throughout all the chords, it still sounds like Pachelbel's canon, right? Yeah, because the harmony is the same, and right, yeah, interesting. Yeah. Other comments? What else did you notice? Anybody? Yeah. Okay, cool. It sounded nice, like everything fit. That's great. That's awesome. Yeah. Harmony. So again, the lesson is, well, you know, and I heard this from my oldest kid is 22, and they told me that learned in high school that 70% of the human body is made of water, which is something I never learned growing up. 70 or 80%, something like that. Does anybody know? 70%? 72% of the human body is water, which I never knew. And I feel like that's sort of like an analogy in music, like learning like this, it kind of shows you that like 72% of the music is just the notes and the chords, right? And once you know that, it's just like a total, it's like the world is flat, who knew, you know? So, okay. So let's look at this in more contexts, okay? I wanted to put this into like a different groove, like a waltz. And then we're going to look at not only just how does it work as far as the melody, but how does it work in terms of the bass lines and the accompaniment parts and the melody when you put them all together. So I'm gonna set up a little waltz groove. So something like, and for the bass line, I'm pretty much always going to play the root of the chord on the downbeat. The root is just the letter name. But then for my inner voices, play on 2 and 3. So the inner voices is another way of saying what, like sort of the harmony or the accompaniment part in the middle, right? So let's just try that. Let's do the bass line pizzicato, just playing the root of every chord on the downbeat. And the root you'll find written as a letter, right? The letter D, the letter A. Let's try that. 1, 2, and. Yeah, you can do pizz or bow if you want, I don't care. Good. Let's do pizzicato now for the inner voices. So for the inner voices, it follows a different set of rules. In other words, we don't want to look at just the letter names anymore. We want to look back at the notes that are in the stacks. And we just grab one note on 2 and 3, right? So like, for example, right? 1, 2, and 1. These are the inner voices. Cool, awesome. And let me tell you another thing about the inner voices. The inner voices tend to follow a rule which is called voice leading. And I don't really care if you remember that, but what it means is that the inner voices tend to move stepwise. So they don't jump all around. Like, so if I played like this and then jumped, that wouldn't be following voice leading. It's gonna be more stepwise. Like this, moves down to here, or moves back up by step. Sometimes the same note in one chord is in the next chord, so you just stay there. That's called voice leading. And that's a rule that typically the inner voices follow. Just to be clear about what are the inner voices. In an orchestra, if we look at an orchestra, we have the basses and cellos, they're sort of by default in the bass role. The first violin is by default in the melody role, and then the second violins and violas are by default in the inner voices rule. And so this is a very simplistic way that I think about music or in any arrangement, is having, you've got your bass, you've got your melody, and you've got your inner voices. So the stuff that I played for you with the loop pedal before, that's how I create everything. What's my bass line? What's my inner voices? What's my melody? So again, the bass rule is that typically on the downbeat of the chord, you will play the root. The inner voices rule is that you will typically voice lead, move stepwise. All right, so let's look at other ways that we could do this voice leading on this waltz of the inner voices. So let's take two notes, for example. Can we try that? You could go downwards or upwards. Here we go, 2, 3, 1. Let's do it again. Try some different things. Sorry, let's do it again. And just try to kind of, we'll do it like 2 or 3 times. And you know, you can play low down in the stacks or high, or you can move your way down, move your way up. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1. Look ahead. One more time, one more time. Very nice, very nice. Thank you, thank you. We could do more with those 2 notes. What if we change the rhythm of the 2 notes? For example, we try that. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. Nice. We could add 3 notes if we wanted. What if we did something like this? We could try to do 3 notes. If you want to stick with 2, that's fine. 2 and 3 and 1. Very nice. And let's go back to playing the melody. So on the melody, you can do a long note if you want. So, or you could add more notes, just using notes from the stack. So you can play 1 note per chord, 2 notes per chord, 3, 4, 5, whatever you want. 1 and 2 and melody. One more time. Go ahead, go for it. Oh, one more. Awesome. So is that like, does that feel like empowering? Like, okay, I can make a melody that works. Raise your hand if you kind of get that feeling. Okay, awesome, cool, that's great. You still got to be able to play the instrument, right? Which is always a challenge, you know? It's always a challenge to play the instrument. That's part of the thing. I was at a masterclass with Yo-Yo Ma one time, and I asked him a question. I was like, you know, something about, you know, how much do you practice or something like that, you know? And one of the things he said to me, which was really assuring to me to hear from Yo-Yo Ma. Do you know who Yo-Yo Ma is?
Of course.
A cello player? Yeah. One of the things he said, you know, it's a lifelong challenge to play in tune on a string instrument. So to hear Yo-Yo Ma sort of acknowledge that was like really meaningful to me, because it's like, man, it seems so hard sometimes to play the instrument. And just to hear somebody say like, yeah, that's what it is. You know, it's not like it wasn't me, it's not my problem, it's just for everybody, it's the same. So anyway, so let me show you some sort of advanced stuff. And you know, the point is for you to understand the process, not that you should be able to do it perfectly today. Like, we're always gonna have to still be trying to play in tune and get a good sound and like play rhythm and work on all these other things. But I want you to be able to see inside, behind the hood, under the hood, if you will. So in this example, I'm gonna use notes that are in the chord stacks that are chord tones, but I'm also gonna go outside of those notes. But there's a way that I do it that is sort of a trick. I want to see if you can figure out what that trick is. Anybody figure out my trick? Yeah.
They're more passing tones than actually part of the melody you're trying to play. So instead of going from one note to the next note in the melody, you're putting a note in between to help you lead up to that note.
That is true. And so part of what you said is that the notes in the melody, it depends how you call the melody, because what are you thinking of as the notes in the melody? To me, I think what you're thinking of is the main note that happens on the downbeat of every chord. So for example, this would be what he's referring to as the melody. It would be the one note that lands on the downbeat of each chord. And I agree with that. What I'm doing is I'm playing a chord tone on the downbeat of every chord. And then in between, I'm doing whatever I want. So listen again. Well, and to be fair, whatever I want within the key of D major right now. I could also do it chromatically if you wanted, but I'm just using notes from the D major scale. So I put a chord tone, passing chord tone. So I always land on that chord tone on the downbeat. So what I want you to try this time is to just try it. It's not gonna be that easy because you haven't spent hours and hours with this yet. So you can stay with just one chord tone or multiple chord tones, but then if you wanted to just take a chance and try to play some passing tones that go from the D major scales and then land on a chord tone on the next down, okay? 1 and 2 and 3 and